Exactly.
Teresa, is Donnie here today?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I have some nice sort of questions for him after the meeting. Yeah, catch him.
Yeah, I'll call the land bank meeting to order. We'll start with a roll call
Chairman Moran,
here.
Ron Knott,
Here.
PJ Keeler,
Here.
Brenda Adams,
Here,
Suzette Boone,
here,
Patrice Perry,
here.
and Chris Watts.
Here.
That is a quorum. And that's it.
We need to approve the December minutes.
I'll make the motion.
Motion Brenda,
I did notice that on the minutes, there was a item number 4, motion made by Brenda and then also seconded by
Oh.
Brenda.
Oh, my mistake.
I noted
Okay.
that too, but I didn't say anything about it.
I don't have my notes in front of me, but I'll find out who that second was and correct that. Thank you.
He was wearing 2 hats that day.
That happens.
okay, any other?
So I'll amend my motion to amend as corrected.
Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carry. LBI administrative reimbursement.
So we're now into, I think this has occurred since our last land bank meeting, since we didn't meet in December. So we received the executed contract from HCR. So we can now access the $100,000 administrative funds that we were awarded last year. The only outstanding item there is the $15,000 to CEDC for the administration of the land bank. So that currently is the only drawdown. So we do need an approval to submit a disbursement request, but then that would come back through the board. We just need to be able to put the paperwork together.
So we entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
So Suzette, second Ron Knott. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Discussion.
Oh, again, budget
Did you
adoption.
miss? Oh, I missed that one, I'm sorry.
So just,
You were
it's
trying
like,
to skip over it.
Yeah,
I was.
I know.
so it's the very back page of the packet. We've seen the various budgets before, so the LB phase 1, that first column, that's that $100,000 in administrative funds. And then when we reviewed the new requests, which we're now, we have access to that because we executed the administrative contract with HCR. So we can apply for that. We went kind of through the categories last time. We had $100,000 for acquisition. We've got $345 for stabilization and rehab. Some chunk of that will go towards whichever landlords are able to access the vacant rental improvement program. And then we have $5,000 for program delivery, which is just a percentage of the overall budget. I do have one question about this, so I might have to bring this back for an amendment. This is a pending question with HCR. So the size of the land bank that we requested $100,000 in administrative funds. That's capped by what your overall budget is. The cap for that level of administrative funds is 400, and it's $1 short of $500,000. It's not clear to me if the administrative funds are included in that $500,000 or if the administrative funds are separate from that. So I'm waiting for clarification on that. So what that would change basically is you would subtract that $100,000 from the new request. I think we probably then at that point bump it up a couple. We can actually ask for the $499,999. Just didn't do it because it felt a little bit like gamesmanship. But we might be able to increase that a little bit, and then obviously we'd have to reduce some of those categories. I think the stabilization and rehab is the most obvious place to reduce that. But we can talk about that if it turns out that I've misunderstood how the budget works.
And that's money that we would be subsidizing the grant that we're getting for vacant.
Some of that, yeah, I don't think we would use all of it. Again, at most, I think we're probably gonna get 7 units out of that grant, out of the 80 that Repco thinks they can do. Like we had talked maybe about doing a 50% match, so if they were getting 50,000 per unit, we did
And some of that would
25.
also be there for if we took on a property and needed
Yeah,
maintenance or stabilization.
which is, that'll come up later under potential property acquisitions. So we could approve it as is for now, and then if everything's the same, if I get confirmation from HCR that this is fine as is, we won't need to revisit it. If HCR says no, the 100,000 is included as part of the overall 500, I'll just bring this back next month with an amended budget.
So which is a better tool for you to have something approved now and then with the possibility that it be amended, or to wait until
I'd rather do it now because we're in this window of, and ABO compliance is another topic on here. We're in this window and adopting a budget is one of the most important things that you have to do as a public authority at the beginning of the year. It really should have been done last year, but we've got some leeway with the ABO. So I prefer to do it now, just so that's done, checked off, and then if we need to, we can come back and revisit it.
And in the future, would we then be approving this budget in December or in January
It would be somewhere within the last 90 days of the calendar year.
of the fourth quarter?
Yeah.
Right, okay,
Yeah, the whole fourth quarter.
okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the budget.
Second, PJ Keeler. Discussion? All in favor?
I,
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, ABO compliance. We received an email from the authority's budget office, I think in November maybe. Basically, you're a new public authority, here are the things that you need to do. Actually, they didn't get that far. They said, you're a new public authority, there are things you need to do. We need to speak to somebody who, can be our contact, and the chairman replied to that email. They have not responded since. I tend not to poke the ABO if the ABO doesn't poke us. But we're starting to get into a window of, at some point, you've got to get your compliance done regardless of how much they're dragging their feet. So some of that is board officer training. Many of you have probably been through board officer training before. It's a little bit different for public authorities. So they've changed how they do it. They used to be able to just send someone down from Albany, they sit in a room with you and get it all done. Now it's scheduled dates and it's almost entirely, I think it's entirely online. So we'd have to figure out which date works for everybody and schedule that. There are some other reporting requirements like adopting the budget. Then we'll have to send everything in at the end of the year to Paris, which is the Public Accounting Reporting and Information System, I think it's called, or Public Authority Reporting and Information System. That's just a bunch of accounting that we'll do on our end, but at some point we're going to have to start. It seems silly because we don't have any money, but we have to get auditors. So there are some things that we need to do as part of the Paris reporting. And I think we'll be talking about that most likely in the February meeting, once we get some guidance from the ABO. I sort of gave them until the end of the year and they didn't say anything, and now it's our problem, not theirs. So I'll reach out to them and figure out what they want us to do.
But wouldn't we audit once we spent money, then wouldn't we audit at the end of this budget?
You have to do an audit anyway. So we were a
What do you
public
audit?
authority all of 2024, so we'll have to do an audit for all of last year. It's going to be, if they charge us more than $1,000, I'll be really upset. But that's
What would
just-
you audit? I don't understand what you'd audit.
there was zero, we got zero, we have zero.
Pretty much, they're pretty much just gonna confirm you have no.
Even PJ can handle that one, right?
For $1,000.
$9.99, I'll do it for, how's that?
We'll basically just get a letter from an auditor that said you received no funds, you spent no funds.
Okay.
That's what
Okay, so that's a $500.
I would hope so.
I hope it's
Okay,
gratis for somebody.
The board and officer training, is it like not-for-profit training or is it a different kind of training? In other words, are there any trainings that might be recognized to fulfill this obligation?
If you've not had public authority officer training, nothing else is going
Okay.
to fulfill it. It's a completely separate bucket.
And how long does that, if it's online or in
Like,
person?
it's like 2 hours.
Okay,
And I don't believe you need to do it annually, but I will confirm that.
okay.
I think it lasts for 3
We did
years.
that for tobacco, right?
Did you guys have to recertify? Did you have to every year? Okay,
Not every year.
not every year. Okay, good.
Whatever
What's
they
our
ask. for.
target
I
for
think
getting
once
this
is
done?
enough.
More
I'd
than
like to
enough.
get it done within the first quarter of this year.
So February or March?
Yeah, so all of the ABO reporting, if you don't have everything into the Paris system by the end of March, you end up on a list that they publish. So basically organizations that haven't fulfilled their obligations, yeah. So hopefully we'll get it done within the first quarter and avoid that. So that's all I've got for ABO.
Are you gonna provide us information about when that is?
Yeah, we'll have to pick a date that works for everyone.
Oh, you gotta do all one time?
Yeah, they supply the dates and it's pretty, I think they do 2 or 3 a month.
Okay.
So we'll hopefully have 6 to
We
9
can do it
options.
here, we can do
Yeah,
it upstairs.
Yeah.
let me know, Will, take a nap and watch it.
Movie theater.
Right.
I'll bring the popcorn.
David's next.
Policies.
6B, policies to be adopted. We're actually in better shape on this than I remembered. So there are 16 policies that we should have approved. We did 11 last year. So the 5 outstanding I'll bring back to the board next month. The 5 left are disposition, enforcement and compliance, freedom of information, investment and deposits, and procurement. Procurement, I think we've got pretty much, we're just going to copy the counties more or less and make a few adjustments. That one's, these are all in draft form. So it's just a matter of bringing it to the board and having them voted on. There are a few tweaks that need to be made, but we're in good shape on policies. I just wanted to give you a heads up that more were coming down the line. And I'll get these over to Rob sooner than you typically get your packets, so that they'll be in the attorney's office at least 2 weeks before the next meeting.
And the second one again was,
I've got,
Enforcement.
enforcement and compliance.
okay, and is this like a town board where you have to review your policies annually? Do we have to review the first 11?
It's part of, you basically have to re-adopt the policies.
Every
You can
year.
do that as an organizational meeting in the
Okay.
beginning of the year, yeah. But since this is the first time, I don't believe we'll need to re-adopt the ones that we've already adopted because they're in a 12-month window, but I'll figure that out when I talk to the ABO as well. And then
Be
the
nice
only-
at some point to have them all on one schedule, so we do them as a
Yeah,
slate.
just get them done as a consent agenda every January or February, whatever the case may be. That was all I have for policies. And then 6C, potential acquisitions. So I've got a question for Chris. Does the county order title searches? For the
We
foreclosed
order
properties?
foreclosure searches, which is basically a last owner search.
Okay,
It's not a full-blown title search.
okay, that's good to know. So from the foreclosure list that we looked at, we've identified 3 properties. One, we've already got the go-ahead, so we've got the go-ahead for a property in Gallatin, and then last night I got an email at about 7:30 at night from Supervisor Helsley. That 2 properties in Germantown that we were interested in are on their town board agenda for tonight, and I don't know what that means. I don't know if it's on a discussion agenda and they just want to talk about the potential of transferring it. Or if there's a vote tonight and they'd like for those 2 properties to go into the land bank, so I'll find out tonight. If it is a vote and it does go forward, I'd like to get the title searches ordered sooner than later. And I think we can do that relatively inexpensively, where we shouldn't need. We definitely won't need an RFP. And we shouldn't need to go out to bid. I don't think that 3 title searches are gonna come in over $5,000.
No, I'd be really shocked if they came in close to that.
Yeah,
Is
Okay.
that a pre-development cost? How are we characterizing that?
in the budget, yeah, that'd be a pre-development.
Okay,
And then the other side of that is one of the things that we had talked about as far as acquiring properties is that we would not prefer, but there was almost a restriction, a requirement was. Don't acquire anything unless you've got a development partner or at least an idea for what that parcel is going to be. So part of that is conversation with the town board in Germantown, what do you see this parcel potentially
What do
being?
they want it to be or do, right?
And the same thing in Gallatin.
Yeah.
And in some cases, Supervisor Riley said, just. We actually don't have a dog in that fight, just, if you want that property and you'd like to develop it, that's entirely up to the board, which would be great. That was always the answer. But I think that's going to.
They don't have an idea for it or a wish or anything, right?
Just affordable housing, is all I said. And there's actually there's a second parcel in Gallatin that the town owns that the supervisor mentioned potentially transferring into the land bank. It's right next to the entrance to the town park. Habitat's aware of it. I think Galvin took a look at it, but nobody's really taken a swing at it yet. So that could potentially be 4 acquisitions in the next few months. That would.
who's
That's
the
pretty
other
good
one?
stead.
Who's the one that we haven't heard? You said 3 on the list, so 2 of them were in Gallup.
Oh, 3 parcels.
3 parcels.
Yeah, not
Oh, I
3
thought it
times,
was
3
times,
parcels,
okay.
sorry. So.
2 parcels in Germantown.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 2 in Germantown are nice, so they're adjacent. They comprise a total of about 7 acres. Right now, I think it's a little bit funky. It's 5 acres and 2 acres, so by right, it's a little bit skewed. The easiest thing to do would be to purchase both and then do a lot line adjustment and get 3.5 acres for each one, because that, with their zoning, that opens up more development possibilities.
What's the minimum lot size there?
There you can get by right 2 units on 3 acres. So it's not necessarily that the minimum lot size is 1.5 acres. It's just that where that is on their zoning map, you can do 2 units on.
But there's no
those.
public water or sewer there, right?
No, you'd have to put in. some
So
septic.
when you're dealing with that today, I mean, in most any list, there's super ideal conditions. You're gonna need about 2 acres.
Yeah.
For
To
wall
find
and
the water and
separation.
sewer and
Right.
a home, so. It's rural, but.
So how does that work? Does the does this board have to vote on something? Like, I don't, was this already done at a meeting maybe that I missed or something? I mean, towns are already approving it to go into the board. How does this board get that information?
Well, they received, it was from the list of properties that the county was going to take over at
Yeah.
auction.
Do we receive that as a board, or was that a committee?
That went to all the supervisors, but I can certainly.
Oh,
send
okay.
a list.
No, I just wasn't,
Yeah.
I
But
didn't
this board
know
would have to
how
vote
that-
on them eventually and move
Yeah.
them,
At
but
that,
we
at the
need,
purchase point.
we
yeah.
need them, we need a record. I think what we tried to devise this was, is we wouldn't make a decision to buy anything unless the town was behind it, you know, so
Okay.
going
So
to the
that's why I
town
just didn't
to
know,
find
like,
out.
you know, now a town is voting on it, but as a member of this board, I don't know what parcels we're talking
Right,
about.
and all they're doing is saying that they're okay, or they have an idea or a plan, you know, but then it would be up to us to make that
And then we
decision.
vote on it
Right?
at that point. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
and
I
we
just didn't
haven't-
know how it's new. I didn't know how it works.
I mean, yeah, so this would be, these would be the first transactions or the first transaction if we're purchased all three at once. At some point, we should have a committee meeting, I think, especially for acquisition.
Opposition committee, yeah.
And especially also to talk about, okay, well, what do we do with it after we acquire it? Who are your potential development partners? What does the property actually need as far as, septic goes, as far as title searches, anything else like that?
Speaking of title searches. I'm not sure how aware everybody is that title insurance is limited when you're talking about tax foreclosures.
Mhm.
So that might be a problem for future sales.
Can you explain that?
I thought the land bank was actually a way to increase that ability to get insurance. Chris, could you speak to that better?
Yeah, so one of the powers that Article 16 of, New York State real property law is that land banks have the ability to. I don't know how to, I think an attorney would need to take a look at this piece, so it's hard for me to explicate. It's never been properly explained to me how a land bank washes properties. They come off the foreclosure list, they go into a land bank, they come out sparkly clean. But I don't understand what the mechanism is that allows that to happen. But from experience, we never had a hard time. I think there was one property in Troy that we had a hard time getting title insurance for.
Well, can I
But that
ask,
wasn't,
only as a follow-up, do most of the properties that you've had experience with in the past, were they mortgage foreclosures or tax foreclosures?
tax foreclosure, almost entirely tax
Okay, all
foreclosures.
right, that's great. If that's the case, and I've never heard of that before, we haven't done that here.
Yeah,
So I don't know.
we had heard that early on when we talked about this process, but I don't know exactly the
Was
legality
it
of how
Adam,
it
was it
works.
Adam who came and talked to us about the Albany land, but who?
Or
Was it Lisa?
It was Adams, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's where I first heard that, was through him.
That would be great if that's, I'll have to, maybe you could put me in touch with somebody who.
Yeah, there's, I think specifically you would be helped by this. I forgot the man's name. John Sid is the attorney for the New York Land Bank Association.
Okay,
And I've been trying to pin him down for a date where, at first it was, can you talk to the entire board? But I think at the very least, the two of you should have a conversation.
yeah, just to know how that happens and how it cleans that.
Yeah, how does this sausage get cleaned? Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Because we need to know that before we talk to any developers, right?
Yeah, just so that they're,
That it is clean and why it's clean.
yeah, so they've got
Oh,
some
it's
peace
clean.
of mind.
So it is one of the drawbacks of normal developers buying a foreclosed piece is, trying to flip it.
And then there's another property that's not in the tax foreclosure list, but I've received a few calls about this. There's a property in Hillsdale that's almost directly adjacent to Hillsdale Town Hall. It's fallen down. It's in really bad shape.
Oh, I know that property.
Yeah, so the issue is, I talked to the guy it's just one guy, it's a kind of sole proprietor, mortgage underwriter. He's still got the mortgage, or he's owed about $350,000 on the mortgage. Somebody bought a house, made like one or two payments, and then just left. They just skipped town. So it's just been sitting there falling apart. But it's in Hillsdale's water and sewer district. It's
Walkable.
got great location. The issue is the building is probably worth about $10,000 in the shape that it's in. He's got it on the market for close to 400.
Mhm.
So he really wants to recoup all the money that he lost in, underwriting this mortgage. There's a lot of interest from the housing committee in Hillsdale, from various folks in town, to acquire the property and turn it into affordable housing. It's just at a $400,000 price point, there's nothing that makes that pencil
He
out.
doesn't wanna donate it and write off the money,
He
huh?
does not want to
They
donate
should talk to their sugar daddy, Matt White.
it. No, I'm unaware of most of the sugar daddies in the county, or else I'd be having conversations with them.
He's the one that's revitalized 3/4 of Hillsdale. Most,
Okay.
the storefronts and it's,
I mean, it's a great location and it could be a great project. It's just, you've got, $400,000 is a huge price tag for a building that needs to be fully gut rehabbed and or taken down.
Right.
and well, he's heavily invested in downtown, so a real citizen, so.
So my suggestion was, I spoke to Ellen Levy this morning, who's one of the co-chairs of Hillsdale's Housing Task Force. I suggested to her to come in and talk to the pre-development committee of the Housing Task Force as kind of a first step. Because our first question was, is there any money at the county? I said, stop, no.
Not like
So
that.
we gotta figure, not for that, yeah, so we'll figure out, what potential funding sources are, but it's also, one of the funding sources that was thrown out there was. The CERTI, New York State CERTI, the Small Rental Development Initiative. That grant application is due in 4 weeks, and there's only $6 million in that pot of funds, and it's statewide, so that's, to me, that's a non-starter, there's no project yet, you don't have site control, it's 4 weeks away, it's just not gonna happen. So I think coming in and talking to one of the Housing Task Force committees is a decent first step. And then depending on how that goes, they might come into this, the board's meeting in February.
And if we're going to look at any of these foreclosed properties, do we not have to get a proper appraisal of them in case somebody comes back in the future too? Okay. More pre-development money, right?
Well, there's two pieces to the appraisal, because there's that piece, which has to deal with the Supreme Court decision.
Yeah.
And then there's just having appraisal in general.
Right.
Yeah.
Are those the only three that right now I should earmark as
What
pulling
about
from
that
that
much
list?
larger parcel? Didn't you have the much larger parcel?
I don't think that was on the foreclosure list. I think that was, it was a separate, that was a separate
Okay,
concern, but some of these may reconvey. So they don't always make it to the point where the land bank can access them. And then I don't know, we had talked about, since this foreclosure sale is going to happen fairly early in the year, the potential for a second one. And we've only got $100,000 in the coffer for acquisitions, and this would, if we got all three of these, that would eat up about 60% of that. So we'd have to be a little bit circumspect about what else is out there.
Chris, just to clarify, we have to purchase these at appraised value, don't we?
If there's, so do you want to go through a little bit of this? Because we had some back and forth. So if the appraised value comes back at less than the taxes owed, you can just pay the taxes owed. If it comes back as more, then whoever the previous owner was is going to get whatever the
difference.
the difference.
If they request it.
Yeah, if they're.
If, yes, yeah.
and
Through a quarter.
is there a sunset on the time allowed for?
3 years.
Yeah, 3 years.
Okay,
So we gotta hang on to it for 3 years.
But I guess my question is,
Yeah,
how much property can we purchase for $100,000? You're talking about 3 properties in Columbia County?
From the foreclosures, if you're just paying back taxes,
If you're just paying back taxes, but
if you're just paying back taxes, yeah, you can do like 5.
Right.
But this is also, the budget that we've got just runs for 1 year. So if, we get to the end of the year and there were things that we wanted that were on the foreclosure list, and we said, oh, we could actually, there's more available to us, we can just request more money.
Yeah.
In the next round of grant funding.
the other question I have is basically to address Suzette's question is, are we as a board supposed to identify properties that we may want to purchase
Mhm.
first before the town? I thought that was.
Yeah, I thought that was part of our thing.
Rather than the town coming and saying, we want you to purchase these properties. I think there's some confusion there.
Yeah, we approached the town. I could have sworn we talked about the properties that we were interested in, but I don't know that it happened in a board
in a
meeting.
meeting, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not in a meeting.
So I could bring them up. I mean, that foreclosure sale won't happen before the next scheduled land bank board meeting. So, I mean, it's kind of the sequence is right. I approached supervisors and said, we're interested in these, Chris and I had a couple of conversations about what was on the list, because that was time sensitive, what goes to the judge and what doesn't. So I did reach out to the supervisors that had parcels that some of us had talked about being interested in, and then Supervisor Riley responded with, go ahead. And then Supervisor Halsey just last night said we have the town board meeting. So if the process is correct, I think there just need to be a little more transparency at the board level, and I can correct that next month. So we can talk about exactly what the parcels are, and what could they be developed into as far as of right development for zoning.
I think I should know the answer to this, but I don't, so I'm gonna ask the question. Do you know do we need to actually pay the appraised value if it's more than the taxes? Or
Yeah, that's my question.
maybe we only pay what the taxes are, and then if we get sued by somebody looking for that extra surplus, then we come up with that money, and I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I think the previous conversation that we had was that it would be pretty easy to demonstrate that there's no surplus for the vacant lots. Right, because it's, it's $20,000 in back taxes is a 2-acre vacant lot going to appraise for more than $20,000.
Yes.
Depends.
Depends where it is,
Depends.
depends where it is. But that was one of the reasons that we were staying away from properties that actually had structures on them. Because some of the structures are going to appraise that quite a bit more than what their back taxes are.
But in terms of the paper trail, do we have to pay the larger amount and put that in an escrow account and hold on to it? That's what you're asking, right?
Right.
Yeah,
It's use of money. Do we have to put out the larger amount and then have it just sit?
In case the previous property owner forgets.
What does the clean transaction look like?
Are you at, I don't know. the
I don't think
answer.
anybody in the state
And
knows
that's
just
just
yet.
because of the-
It's all new.
I don't think there's case law like that.
No, they haven't figured it out.
Some land banks have purchased properties in the wake of the Supreme Court decision, so
Right.
we can figure out what their appraisal method was. Or just how they're approaching, do they have funds in escrow in case that does happen? I think it's unlikely for it to happen, but you would hate to
I
get
think you have
caught
to carry that
unawares.
in the books as a liability, don't you?
Yeah, as a net
Well,
value. almost.
Right,
You don't know unless there's a claim put in for it.
right, but it's a
It's
potential.
about as clear
It's
as
a
mud,
mess,
Right,
you know,
it is a
right?
potential liability, so.
But you're right, I don't think the money is owed unless they make a claim, to your point, there was some wording like that, so but that you could wait 2 months,
After administrative
2
fees.
2 years and 9 months and then file,
So this might be one of the operating procedures that we have to define how we have to formalize how we're gonna do this. So that we're doing it consistently every time. It's probably an unwelcome suggestion.
He's running away over here, so.
I think so.
Oh, sorry, was there a question for me?
No. it was
No.
a statement.
Okay.
We're just ready for you to run out of the room now.
Okay, that's all.
But
I
I
got.
did think that we've never met as the acquisition committee,
None of the committees have met yet.
That might also be a first quarter
so
goal.
that would be a place, to Suzette's point, the acquisition committee should make a recommendation that we're looking at these parcels and,
That is a typical process. I think we
Advance
tried to
that
schedule
too.
an acquisition committee meeting, and you might have been on vacation
I
and
was.
just never got revisited. But in the interim, we had. a
we
bunch of
appointed you in
conversations
charge of
about-
it, so, When you're on vacation, that's what happens,
So we can, I still. Well, I guess I need some direction here because I'm gonna go to the Germantown Town Board meeting tonight, and if they. Want to have a vote tonight about whether or not to transfer the property into the land bank, but we're still a little bit unclear about what the process is. Would you like me to advise them to? Hold off until the next town
What's
board
the
meeting?
timing? Do we,
We own
I know, but does it make a difference whether they made a decision tonight or in a month?
When's the auction?
it. There is.
No, because we haven't scheduled an auction, right? So,
So as long as they're ahead of the auction, you're fine. right?
What's the earliest the auction can be scheduled for at this point?
February or March, I believe.
Okay, oh, it could be as soon as next month?
Probably not, no, but.
Okay,
I don't have a contract in place yet with the auction, because I was waiting for this.
Yeah.
So I don't have a contract in place with the auction committee yet, or the auction company yet, I still have to go to, county government.
So what would their question be? Because if the taxes will be paid in either case.
right.
And they're not involved in the additional fund because that would be returned to the owner. So what would delay a decision tonight?
I think the only question, I was thinking about this too, from the town's point of view, what were the questions that I might have to field? I think one of the questions is if you can't develop this property, what happens to it after you buy it? Right, and then I think it just goes back to the county for, foreclosure sale. To the general public.
Right.
I thought our process that we had talked about and kind of decided on was that basically the board looked at certain properties here. And then basically said, yes, we'd like to purchase this in one in Germantown. And the only thing we were looking for from the town board was just approval to put it in the land bank. Versus them doing something with the property.
Yeah.
I thought that's what we're at. So I mean, I don't think there's a big issue there at the town if they just make a motion to approve to move it to
Yeah,
land
doesn't-
bank, subject to the land bank's blessing.
But they could
Yeah.
say, I want a grocery store there, or I want affordable
Right.
housing, they could make and you can't really decide that, but they could make a recommendation to
Right.
us, I think, you
But
know.
I think that was the point. We just didn't want to be a barrier to whatever the town's plans for that parcel might have
Exactly,
been.
right, yeah,
Right,
we wanna work with them if we can, but
Right.
you know, what do they wanna
So
see?
what you're saying is it's no harm for them to vote on it tonight.
No,
I think the only wrinkle would be, I can't imagine that any town would do this. We'll sell it to you, but only within this time frame. So I think it would just be an approval. of the sale.
HCC used to do that. They used to
Oh, would
sell-
they? Would they say
yeah,
it's gotta
it has
happen
to be
within?
developed within a certain number of months,
Yeah,
Okay.
but that's.
Is that for foreclosed properties?
Some of those were that was Columbia.
Hudson's been trying it too, the city
They
of
were-
Hudson.
They were part of the revitalization, city took them over during the revitalization, the redevelopment plans. So I don't know how they were acquired, but they acquired huge swaths, quite a number of parcels through a redevelopment that didn't take place.
So these two Germantown parcels have no properties, no homes on them,
No, it's
It's just
vacant
vacant land.
Yeah.
Because we're only doing vacant land, right?
right, yeah. We're
Yeah,
trying to,
that's so far.
It would
other
be the
than Hillsdale
exception.
House is worth $500,000.
We'll see. I mean, that's a lot of liability to take back to your portfolio really
And
early on.
The Gallatin Town Board already approved to,
Supervisor Riley gave me the thumbs up. So I don't know what their internal process was. I didn't ask. But he gave the thumbs up for acquiring that property from the foreclosure list.
but wouldn't you need something, when, would you need like minutes or resolution or
I think it would be
something?
cleaner to have that, yeah.
Thank you.
But the thumbs
Yeah,
up.
I wouldn't get involved unless we do have that
Yeah,
Okay,
from
that's
the
fair.
town board, only because you don't want it to backfire on you.
yeah, and town board change.
You remember the New Lebanon piece where, we had somebody that wanted it and then somebody didn't, and, it kind of divided town,
But again, that could be formalized in the acquisition policy.
Right,
Mhm.
That's all I've got. We do have a member of the public on. I don't know if they have a comment.
That's a supervisor.
No.
Supervisor Simmons?
Says he's there.
No, I'm good. I just wanted to hear where you guys were at with this whole thing. And saw it was on the schedule, so appreciate the time you guys put in on it. Thank you.
So just one more question of Chris, what's the timing to decide if there would be a second auction this year? What's the timeline look like? Or maybe what are the things would we consider before we would do another auction?
I have the application in. It depends on what the court schedule is like and, what they're gonna come back on. Typically, I'd like to wrap this one up before I even start that. Just because of all the other work that goes along with it, like the deeds and trying to figure out now what I have to do with those surplus funds, if we have to get involved or. I don't know how that's gonna work. There's a lot of moving parts with that. Then it's up to the court and how quick I can get the paperwork generated. To see if we can get another order, do another deed to put it into our name.
Have we ordered searches for the next round or?
We have searches for 19s. 18s are the next one. We have searches for 19s.
Okay.
Does that mean we have them for 18 and 19?
18s don't accept the paperwork all the time.
Okay.
Is
So,
that what
we're-
this list is?
I thought this was
It's
17.
It's
This
17,
one's
so,
17.
okay.
yeah,
Well,
so we're
COVID didn't help us in this
we're
issue.
6 years behind,
We were over
So-
2 years is,
Not long
you
enough.
can't do anything before 2.
right?
But they're on a
Go
single.
down to-
So we're really 4 years.
2 years, I think, or no sales. That'll back you up.
Would we ever catch up? That's what I'm also trying to wonder, do we pace ourselves and do 2 a year for 3 years and catch
did it
up?
once before.
We were closer.
Yeah,
prior to
we,
COVID.
many,
COVID.
10 or 12 years ago, we were 6 years behind and then we got caught up. So yeah, it could happen.
We got up to about 4 years.
Because I don't know if you started to see this, but we started to see the bank foreclosures start to come through. Have you started to see this? They just started trickling through. I had 3 this week.
Interesting, I haven't seen that, and I've been wondering about that.
Yeah.
From, you know, the real estate market, it's been, I haven't seen anything coming back on as far as foreclosure lists.
I was surprised, these are all high-end properties, they're not.
We've got some that are, lesser properties, but, the bank's holding paper and they're just not doing anything,
Right.
So I think the.
PJ's got one of Stuyvesant too.
Okay,
We won't talk about that.
No.
Not today.
but because this is the first one, this is the bleeding edge of education, so it's gonna take
Right.
longer than they would normally take.
Right.
So it's probably a thin on the ground idea that we get a second one this year.
Let's keep pushing for it though.
Okay,
The,
PJ needs some money,
yeah, auction probably not. Get it
getting it
ready,
approved.
possibly.
So the auction this year will be 17 and 18.
No, just 17.
So I guess this is.
If Chris Wick's a little overtime, we can do 18s this year too.
So on Route 8, just as an example, on Route 8 in Germantown, really nothing around it, very rural, so it's, 7 acres total between these two parcels. Ballpark appraisal or land value?
$500,000.
No, yeah. I have no idea offhand, I mean, it depends on the property. Are
Yeah,
there wetlands, are there, what's?
steep grades, they're not
Yeah,
next to the river.
are there views?
No, it's nowhere near the river,
Yeah,
no real views.
yeah, I'd have to look
to
at.
go from 2,000 acres
I
to 20,000
don't know what the
acres.
properties are, so I have to look at them to see what the value is, it's that's Germantown, they haven't been through a reval in a few years, anyway.
You guys looking at who had done revals since COVID, it's most towns and villages,
Oh,
you're doing it
yes.
right now, right? Or just
No,
did it
we
last
just
year?
finished,
Yeah,
I got some good news I wanna share with you.
Yeah, just about everything got it done.
But most any building lot of any size is $35,000 today or something, right?
Yeah, and that
well,
was part
that's
of my
it, a
question,
good
right?
building
So,
lot,
right.
yeah.
right, so if
Yeah.
you're looking at buying two for maybe, and I don't know the back taxes off the top of my head, but we'll say 40 for those two, it's you just. If it's 30,000 that you've got to hold in escrow, it's like, all right, now you're talking about,
Is there waste?
the state doesn't love land banks paying that much money for parcels, but we have.
Why is it?
Intense upward
Why
pressures on
why
our
they just let it
prices,
go?
yeah,
So
it's
that's.
seller's market out there.
Something behind
And I think having a developer with a plan is gonna be key to that,
Huge.
it.
Any other comments, questions?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Thank you.
So,